All right, the next topic, multiple offers. Multiple offers have become things that are risky for us. It would be great if multiple offers meant we got paid 2 or 3 times on the same house, but it doesn't work that way. There's different ways we've done it in the past. We've gotten into horse races where the seller might counteroffer several contracts and say the first one that comes back signed by the buyer wins. I've driven 80 miles an hour up Highway 280 before there was 15 stoplights between here and Brook Island, before there was Brook Island. We don't want to do that anymore. We don't want to do that where the seller counteroffers and puts some kind of language in there where if they all come back, he picks the one he likes the best. What's happened too many times for us is the seller ends up having more than one person thinking they bought the house, and then we have a lawsuit over it. So our policy and our advice is to, when you get multiple offers, to advise the seller to pick the one offer he likes the best and work that offer. You want to avoid selling the same house twice at all cost. NAR has made some changes on how we're supposed to do with multiple offers, and we have adjusted our paperwork to do what I'm about to tell you. The policy that we practice with multiple offers is as we used to do. Now that our paperwork allows it and addresses it, so that we tell the seller if we get more than one offer, we are going to make all parties aware. We're not going to tell them anything about anything more than the existence of the offer, but unless the seller tells us do not do that, we tell our agents, if you get more than one offer, make everybody aware of the existence of other offers. So let's say it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and Bill calls me up and says, I'm bringing you an offer. I'll have it there before 5 o'clock, and I get it. And then on the way, I get a call from Jerry, and she says, I'm bringing you an offer. I say, well, that's great. Looking forward to it. But now let me tell you, I've got an offer coming in from Bill. Now, if you want to change your offer, you have a chance to do it. If you want to improve it now that you know you're in a competing situation, make your changes. Now you know about Bill's. In about 2 minutes, I'm going to hang up, and Bill's going to know about yours. You make all parties aware of the existence of other offers only, but you don't tell them any information. And, I mean, they're going to ask. Chances are very good they're going to ask. But no condition, no contingencies. Not what kind of financing, not whether it's clean or not, or any of the other stuff, just that one exists, and tell them to make their best offer, but divulge no more than that. I would do that in every case. Some people think there's some good exceptions to that, but you can never get into trouble by over-communicating the existence of multiple offers, especially if one of the other offers is yours. If your offer wins and there's one or two or three other offers, there's no way those people are going to feel good about you. But you can minimize that if you've communicated with them thoroughly, promptly, and kept them advised as to what's going on. Maybe you can be the lucky one who comes out with a good name with those people, even though you may have won it fair and square. It's just going to be hard for them to accept it a lot of times. Now, what the seller does, you tell the seller, here are your offers. And I've had as many as 4 competing offers going on at one time. You tell the seller, here are the offers, and you pick the one that you like the best, and we will work that. And I will tell the other people we're going to put them aside, and we're going to work the one. The seller wants to work the one he's chosen. Now, the seller may make a few runs back and forth, and if that offer does not develop into something satisfactory to the seller, he may say, stop, I'm going to withdraw my counteroffers on this one. I'm going to contract B. I'm going to the next contract and moving on that way. He can do that, but just you do not want the seller to counteroffer more than one contract at a time. Another tip on that, this is a sales tip, because it was a lot of fun having multiple contracts, because I usually could find a way to win. It didn't take much smarts, just a little bit. But you might, for instance, look for ways with your buyer to if you're competing, you want to look for ways with your buyer to say yes to the seller. Maybe you want to not negotiate. Let's say you decide I'm not going to negotiate price, but I'm going to negotiate the custom drapes or the appliances or the possession date or something like this, I think you're smart to get a buyer and just say, let's make this as simple as possible so he's not negotiating 5 or 10 different points with you. You give him everything he wants, so to make it simple to say yes to do, all we got to do is work out the price. Or all we got to do is work out the possession, whatever the issue might be. Make it simple like that. Another way, I had a dual. I had several contracts coming in, and the one fellow had just graduated from law school, and he had a whole legal size page filled in with handwritten stuff, using most of what he learned in years 2 and 3. And you again keep it simple. Look for ways to say yes every way possible, and coach your buyer to make their offer that way. Next, copyright issues. A few years ago, I got a call in the winter, and this lawyer in North Carolina was trying to reach Realty South. He's having a hard time finding the right legal entity, and told me he had a copyright lawsuit. I felt sorry for him, and I thought, this is silly. We couldn't be sued for copyright. I'll make it easy. I gave him all the information he needed so he could properly sue us, which he then did. The long and the short was, I learned a lot about copyright law that I hope I'll never have to use again. If you're going to be working with new construction, make sure that you're not going to be the one who copies a planner's, a designer's home plan. Have the build you want a listing agreement signed on every property, not one of these things where builder agrees to list lots 1 through 60 with Jim and one signature. Have a listing agreement on every property. We've put into our listing agreement that the builders stipulate that they have paid for the use of plans in our listing agreement. It says the seller specifically represents and warrants that seller or builder has a complete authority to sell the property and convey title, and that there are no unpaid royalties or copyright fee obligations due to anybody in connection with the property described herein. What happened with us, our agents, often builders want agents to be free clerical work. The builder paid for the plan, built that house one time, but then proceeded to pay for it serially, over and over and over. He built that same plan, and he had an obligation to the plan designer to pay for that plan every time he built the house. Where we got into trouble is we made copies of that plan and gave it to people so they could see what the house would be like. And under copyright law, when the plan designer sued the builder, he was also able to sue anybody who profited from this bad transaction. And so that got into hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of commissions, and was a real pain for us. We like being sued over things like bad houses and septic tanks and HVACs that break, etc. I say that with a smile. But I'd rather be sued for those things. It's more, we know them. Anyway, this copyright issue is not a problem on custom homes, so you don't have to worry about the custom homes so much. It's not a concern on small, tiny developments or higher-end developments. It's more of an issue where we have maybe use the term cookie cutter use of plans or highly repetitive use of plans. You don't want to copy those plans unless you have a signed statement saying that the plan designer permits it. And I guess it's just as a general point, we need to stick to what we do best and not become clerical staff by copying and delivering plans. A few more things here. There are also elements of risk management. A year or so ago, I was asked to speak down at the salesmanship conference in Tuscaloosa on the topic of what I wish somebody had told me. And since I'm teaching risk management class, I went to our baby agents, our new agents who've been out in the last year, and said, what were some things that we did not teach you at the CRSA class that you wish somebody had told you? And so I picked a few of those to cover and go over with you so that you can learn from them too. Actually, some of these are really, I had an agent tell me in the Inverness office that she followed my advice and saved her first contract. I'll tell you that in a minute. The first one, this is about making assumptions. You do not want to make assumptions when you're writing a contract. This agent said, I assumed that when the appliances were shown on the MLS profile, that they all stayed in the house, and I didn't need to write it into the contract, even though the appliances were freestanding. She said, just because it's listed, I learned that if it's not built in, put it into the contract, write it in. Refrigerator stay. If the stove slides out, write it in, stove to stay, etc. Next assumption. Here's another agent learned. She said, I assume that when the seller agreed in the contract to clean the carpet, that they would have it done professionally. The seller told us, well, we vacuumed it and cleaned it ourselves. And so they got to closing and they learned this, and she said, I learned to be specific, to write in the contract that the cleaning of the carpet would be professionally done and have the seller provide a receipt. Her point was, and I like this, she said, when you're new and laying out thousands of dollars for expenses, you don't need to make it harder on yourself by having to eat costs. I like to tell a story on an agent. Since we're on disc, I won't tell her name, but she's a great agent. She probably sold one of the most expensive houses ever a few years ago, several $1 million. But her first sale was a little listing of mine over in Edgewood, little Hansel and Gretel, probably 1,000 square foot cottage. And she brought me a contract, and she had written on there the following items to remain. And she had things like front porch rail, door handle, floor joists, cabinets, wiring, etc. And I told her, I said, Angie, not a real name, they must be teaching you some really good stuff over at our real estate school, because the seller was really planning on taking those door handles and the wiring, etc. But because you've written them into the contract, you'll probably talk them out of taking those things. Well, the long and the short was, we got the contract worked out, and after closing, she called me up and said, Jim, the seller has taken out the medicine cabinet out of the wall. And I pointed out to her, well, you didn't write that in, so they figured, exhaustive as your list was going to be, they assumed that they could take the medicine cabinet. Now, that's a fun story. We got the medicine cabinet put back in there, but my point is, do not make assumptions. Next one is, here's a case where, this is the one where the agent in Inverness made some money. It's not done until the deal is signed, sealed, and delivered. That's not just a Stevie Wonder song. Do not go to bed on the deal. My first broker told me, strike while the iron is hot. A little blacksmith lingo there, I guess. But I made the mistake myself, writing up an offer. This is probably about 1980 as well. Times are hard. This guy was going to hold paper, house in Vestavia. And we're working this contract back and forth, and it gets to be about dark. And I've got a date with a future Mrs. Dye. And I think to myself, now, I can be late for this date. She would have married me anyway. But I thought, no, I'll wait and take this over there tomorrow morning. I'll go to early church and I'll take this over tomorrow morning. Right after that, I'll have this done deal in his hands by 11 o'clock. Well, that's why I say it's not done until it's signed, sealed, and delivered. We may have had an agreement in principle, but the next day I get over there early and there's a note on his door, taped to his door saying, Mr. Dye, I've been told that because you haven't delivered the contract that I'm free to rescind my offer, and I've decided not to sell my house. Now, in these times, and in those times, that was a huge chunk of income. When you're selling 10 or 12 houses a year, loss of one house is a 10% pay cut right there. So I learned the hard lesson, and the agent told me, the new agent here recently told me that she said, I did just like you said. I wrote the offer. We stayed up to about 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. Same thing again. But I pushed it through, got it done. And I was so glad, because the next day, after getting my contract worked out, signed, sealed, and delivered, 2 other offers came in, one of which was a better price than what mine was. So that piece of information just saved you some money. Didn't keep you out of court, but it did save you some money. Here's another one. If you're ever the second agent, don't copy the listing of the first listing agent. I don't care how smart they are. I don't care how good they were or are. We had one where the agent said, I thought I could trust your information because you're so good. And you said the thing was on sewer. And the people's moving van drove across the yard and crushed field lines. Field lines go with a septic tank. So there was a lawsuit over a faulty, she'd sold my house with a septic tank. They thought it was a sewer, so there's a lawsuit there on top of the broken field lines. So do not copy the listing of the prior agent. Do all the work yourself. Ditto if you're selling it for sale by owner. Do all the work yourself. Just because there's not another agent there, you've got to do it. It's not the same as co-oping with the seller. Next point is to understand that the handwritten terms override the pre-printed form. understand that if you write something into an addendum or in the margins of the contract, that overrules what's in the pre-printed form. Further, if you write something that's already addressed in the form, you're crazy because you're making your job harder. They'll argue what you've written. They will not argue what's in the pre-printed form. I had somebody who came and you need to know your contract. It's amazing how some of the top people in town don't know what the contract says. I had a co-op with the number one agent in Alabama that year, or at least in Birmingham that year, and he did not understand what the contract says. I brought him a cash deal, and he thought the attorney was taking advantage of him because the attorney had his seller paying the full title policy. Well, that's what the contract says happens, but he hadn't really read the contract. He'd only dealt with 100 of them that year probably. Know what it says. Getting down to the last few, this is a fun one. Mailboxes are for stamped or metered mail only. You know, I learned that, but I forgot that. And my sister got in the business, and she called me up and said, I got into trouble. I went over in Helena and put things in the mailbox, and the Helena post office called me up, and they apparently talked with her very rough, and she was in tears, and the woman took pity on her and told them, we're not going to put her in the federal pen, but just don't do that anymore. So I told her, I forgot about it, and I just said, yeah, but the people in my neighborhood put little magnetic things and stick them in the mailbox. And so try that. She said, well, she did, and the next thing you know, Chelsea calls her up and fusses at her again, but this time she's coming out with her hands up fast, and she confesses, and she says, long and the short is you can't touch the mailbox, you can't touch the post, the outside, you can't even breathe the air within a 1 foot radius of the mailbox. And according to the Chelsea Post Office, Realty South agents are the worst about this offense. So I'm doing my best to get us on the straight and narrow again. Last few things I think here. Mutual release. If the contract is dead, you need the mutual release form signed. Even if you think everybody knows it's dead, have the mutual release form signed where everybody acknowledges that it's dead. Not just understood, but have them explicitly acknowledge. You don't need a release form to make it dead, but you need a mutual release form to prove that it's dead, and that solves a number of problems that we don't need to get into. Sales tip here, while we're wrapping it up. I want you to have a positive attitude toward inspectors. Inspectors kill deals, but they'll take your bullet. Their job is to find problems. If a buyer asks you, who do you like as an inspector, we tell them to go to the Alabama Building Commission's licensed building inspector's webpage. Those are the people we want to do business with. If they ask you who you like, I tell them I don't like any of them. They all kill my deals. And they'll laugh when you say that, but you just smile and laugh along. Let them make the choice there. And there, you would rather have no deal than the deal where somebody finds a problem and has to take you into court. Finally, I'll wrap up with this last thought. It took me a while to learn that the laws in Alabama differ from the laws in a lot of other states. And most of us get probably rely on the Realtor magazine for our legal advice. You don't want to do that. I was so flattered in the mid-'90s there, I was invited to speak, to be on camera, filming something like this for the National Association of Realtors. People across the country would be looking at me, and I thought, I'm so, here I was, probably wasn't 40 yet, and I'm young, and I'm sharp, and I must be attractive. And so they had me come, I show up at this meeting where they're filming the thing, and the general counsel of the National Association's in there, and she said, hi, Jim. And I felt great because Laurie Janik knows my name. What are you doing here? I felt great because Laurie Janik has an interest in what I'm doing. And I told her I was here to speak on the risk management film series, and that I was going to speak on property conditions. She said, Jim, please leave the room. Don't get in front of the camera. Don't be behind the camera. Don't be in here when the camera's even turned on. Jim, you're from Alabama. Things are different there. And so I guess if you try to follow some of the practices that are discussed, or that seller disclosure, or some other things that are covered in the National Realtor magazine, you're going to be giving out good advice that's good someplace else, but won't be good for you. Just like taking somebody else's medicine, it may get them well, but it may well make you sick. If it doesn't make you sick, at least it won't get you the desired results. So let's get your training here, stay in Alabama, and I thank you for taking time to listen to this CRSA course on risk management, and invite you to take the risk management lessons in real world lawsuits after you got a little bit of real estate sales time under your belt. Thanks.